Welcome to the Jeff Crilley Show. And now, here's Jeff Crilley.
Welcome back to the Jeff Crilley Show. Back by popular demand, a couple of guests who were here about 6 weeks ago, and we got such a great response from having you guys on the last time that we decided to bring you back. I've been calling you the Prophets of Profit, Ken Farrell and Don Osvog from Riverbend Growth Partners. Welcome back to the Jeff Crilley Show.
Hey, thanks for having us back.
Thanks, Jeff.
Okay, so you guys are in the process of writing a book, and I'm excited about this book because I think it really becomes a must-read for all business owners, large and small. Let's talk about the book. What's the name of the book?
The title of the book is Because Profit Matters, and that really is the core of our consulting business, helping companies that are either stuck at a given profit level or revenue level, or companies who are on borderline becoming insolvent. We help them focus on what drives profit, what grows revenue, and how to understand what the critical business factors are in your business to make that happen.
So tell us how that works, because it seems like you have a small business owner and they start to grow and then the wheels fall off. We've seen it time and time again. They were doing great when it was just one store, but then they expanded to 2 stores or 3 stores and all of a sudden it falls apart. Don, what happens?
Well, I think, we are absolutely blessed, Jeff. We get to meet hundreds of business owners and entrepreneurs who are just phenomenal subject matter experts. I mean, they think of products and services and have passion that's just off the charts. What happens, though, I think, and we hear this from a lot of the middle market bankers that we deal with, is as businesses start to grow, and all of a sudden it's not just a handful of people in a garage or in a conference room or small office that's building a business, but you've got multiple locations, you've got hundreds of customers. All of a sudden there's a need for what we simply refer to as business management expertise.
Right.
And, how do I scale? How do I organize? What kind of skill sets do I really need in the business to provide the kind of leadership to grow, to market, to sell, to drive operations, to continuously improve, all of those types of considerations.
Right.
And I think part of it is they just don't know what they don't know in many cases.
Ken, do you find, is there a commonality that happens when a business grows? Is there, when you guys come in to consult with a business, is there typically a place that you look first to find where all the dirt is? It's swept under this carpet, or it's in that closet over there?
Well, we do. We have a template of what a well-functioning business looks like, regardless of what business they're in. In fact, our methodology is business agnostic. It could be oil and gas, it could be healthcare, it could be a manufacturing company. So we have this template that we go in, and yes, we have the 6 or 7 areas that we're looking at fairly quickly. We look at leadership and how they're involved in the business and defining the business purpose, the vision for the company and the direction, how that direction becomes manifest in a strategic planning process. And it doesn't have to be a complicated process. It could be 3 to 5 pages of directional statements that can be communicated within the organization. How is that those strategic initiatives deployed in the organization? How are they measured? How do they define results? How do they do root cause analysis when they have problems?
Right.
And really turn their business into a series of management processes, as Don mentioned, looking for that management process to help them identify what areas need to be focused on once they implement it. We also have we look for what are the 4 to 6, 7 things that they have to really do well to be successful. So we ask them, what are the critical business factors in your business? And these are things that tend to focus around the customer. So we say, how does the customer look at your business? What are their expectations? How do you measure those things? How do you know you're doing well? Because if you don't do well in those things, which tend to be the day-to-day blocking and tackling kind of issues, then your competitors are probably going to eat your lunch.
Yes. And one bad apple can spoil the bunch. We've all had this experience where you eat at a fast food restaurant and it's anything but fast. They it takes them 15 minutes to serve up that burger. There's dirt around. They haven't mopped it, and you get a negative impression about that whole chain from that one bad experience.
Right.
It is hard to keep quality as a business expands. Isn't that right?
It is. It is. One of the things, though, that becomes interesting, and we see this with a lot of businesses as they start to grow, the founder, the owner, gets very concerned about whether or not the organization will maintain the values that he or she initially instilled in it.
Right.
And quality, pride, customer service, pride of product and service, et cetera, are always top of the list, Jeff. And what we see, Kim mentioned the kind of the template that we utilize when we go in and look at businesses. What we're really looking for simply is what we refer to as business alignment. There's an old saying that every business is perfectly aligned to get the results it gets.
Right.
When you say that with a group of business people, you see head shaking, some grins, and then you follow it up and you say, but very few get the results they want or deserve, but they don't know why. And I think a lot of what we do and where issues like quality, like customer service, et cetera, fall by the wayside is that there's not alignment in the business.
Yes.
So in other words, there's not clarity of what's expected of everyone in the business. Accountability is not in place. There's not an understanding and focus on really what's most important in the business.
Let's take Apple, for example. I've been very impressed with the way there's a consistency across the brand. Not only is the experience of their devices good, but if you go to their stores, you have all these young people, and you're never waiting very long, and they've got it down, don't they?
Yeah, they do. They clearly have a focus on what customers expect of them. When you go into a store, you want to talk to somebody who's technically trained on the product. They know how to engage a customer. They know you don't want to wait a long time, and they know you want a solution that you can get the first time you go there. If your problem is a little more complex, they have the Genius Bar, and you can go there and spend a little more time, get a little more technical support. And to your point, they have Steve Jobs was very, very focused on how to build the brand and protect the brand, and what does that brand mean in the marketplace to customers.
I remember one time I was at an Apple store, and I saw a lot of blue shirts, and so I asked the guy, I said, how many employees do you have working right now? And he says, between the front of the room and back there? I said, yeah. He says, about 50. And I looked around the store, and there couldn't have been more than 50 customers. So they actually had like one employee per customer. And I thought to myself, okay, this is a very profitable story, a profitable company that could be cheap when it comes to staffing. I mean, they certainly could cut some corners. But if they did, it would cause the experience at the store to start to decline if you had to wait. So I'm interested from your standpoint, Don. I mean, what are they doing right?
Well, I think, Jeff, from the standpoint of setting very clear expectations about what the brand, what the customer experience is all about. They, from the standpoint of the look, the feel, et cetera, it's very clearly understood. A lot of the middle market businesses that we go into, in fact, it was interesting. Inc. not too long ago surveyed 500 CEOs, mostly middle market CEOs. One of the questions they asked both the CEOs and their leadership team is, can you state the business's strategy, and do you believe in it? Now, when the CEOs were asked the question, 92% of them said, yeah, no problem. Everybody understands it. What do you think the percent response was from the leadership teams?
You got me.
2.
Really?
2%.
Oh, no. That's not good.
2% of the leadership teams. So I think what you've got is, in many cases, a situation where the CEO is sitting there saying, hey, I understand this stuff. It's as clear as the nose on my face. Therefore, it must be clear to everybody. When, in fact, it's not. Now, Apple understands that. A lot of the good brands, all the good brands understand that. A lot of, we believe, middle market businesses are missing huge opportunities to really set the right kind of expectations in their organizations. build cultures, if you will, that'll focus on results, focus on overachievement, and things of that nature.
My guests right now, Ken Farrell and Don Osvog with Riverbend Growth Partners. Let's talk about the idea that a small business owner, when they first start out, they may be an expert in whatever it is they do. They're not necessarily an expert in leading people. They're not an expert in managing people. They're not an expert in cash flow. They're an expert in whatever it is that they do, building that widget. Right. When does a company need guys like you? And do they need you before there's problems, or do they need you when they just miss payroll?
Well, hopefully they come before they're ready to miss payroll, because time is not your friend in that case. So what we would say is that a subject matter expert starts a business, has an outstanding product, or the market wouldn't accept it. So they build a business, they get to a certain revenue level, and it's different for every business. It used to be, you get to $30 or $40 million, and suddenly things that used to happen easily are now hard. The product is ready to go to maybe the next evolution. There's competitors in the marketplace, and now there's a need to be. They're not going to be as successful because of the product. Now they have to manage their way forward, and they have to make a lot of hard decisions. So they need us when the revenue level sort of starts to plateau and go in a straight line, flat. They need new ideas. They probably need some management expertise. So that's when they turn to people like Don and I.
Unfortunately, though, I got to kind of disagree a little bit. There's a big difference between when they need us and when they call us.
Yes.
Because generally, it's a little bit late in the process when they call us, but we enjoy that. We're up for that.
Have you had that where you come in and you're like, you guys should have called me like 5 years ago?
We've had those occasions.
Or so.
It's pretty. There are other times when they should call as well. Typically, the subject matter expert who started this business and has been successful with it, this is probably their retirement plan. Mm. And so they get to the point where they're ready to, they say, well, I'm going to exit in the next couple of years. They call in some people who might be interested in buying it. They make an offer on the company. The offer is determined by them to be way too low.
Right.
The offer is for $15 million. They think it ought to be 20. And our statement is, if you give us 2 to 3 years, because not that we need 2 to 3 years to turn the business in the right direction, but you need 2 to 3 years of growing revenues and profitability to get the value that you want. So that's a point in time in the evolution of the business when they really ought to call somebody like us.
And it can happen to really smart companies too. I think about companies like Blockbuster that really had they were synonymous with videos, and they really didn't appreciate Netflix and kind of video on demand, and they completely disappeared as a brand. Had they brought you guys in when there was this this tipping point between success and failure, what would you have told them?
Well, I think it starts with your customer. And if you think you're smarter than your customer and choose not to listen to them, those stories generally end pretty sadly.
Yes.
And I think that was a situation where, for whatever reasons, and I haven't studied the particulars of Blockbuster per se, but from the outside looking in, it certainly looked like things were happening from a market standpoint. Different delivery mechanisms were out there that Blockbuster chose, either didn't think would stick, or chose to ignore for whatever reasons.
I think the example is in any business today, you cannot ignore technology. Technology has a way of changing every business that we can think of. It's changing, banking. It's changing the way the book business. It's so you've got to look at your business on a regular basis in your strategic planning process and say to yourself, what's happening in the market? What's happening with technology? What could come at us in the next year or two that could really change the way business is done? So I think the lesson there, without regard to a lot of specifics, is people ignore technology.
Tell us one of your favorite success stories. What's one that comes to mind when you think about, it's a good thing they called us when they did?
We, it's hard to figure out where to start. I mean, I think probably the toughest engagements that we have, if you will, are the turnarounds. And we've had a number of those over the last couple of years. I think, and touch wood, they've all been successful. They're a lot of hard work, but I think probably the greatest satisfaction I think both Ken and I get out of those situations is being able to go in, do what we do, get the business righted, if you will, and know that there's hundreds of people that are keeping their jobs.
Wow. That must be very satisfying. Now, when you come into a company, do the employees generally know that you're there and you're there to fix the company, or how do you operate?
Well, we're going to start an engagement on the 21st with a large manufacturing company. And so the first thing we're going to do is we're going to walk in and communicate to everybody in the company, from the senior management team all the way down into the organization, why we're there, what our role and responsibility is going to be, what our objectives are, and how we're going to work with them to make sure that we're successful. Because there's a common shared stakeholders here that they all want it to be successful.
Right.
The first thing they want to know is that you're not going to come in a turnaround scenario and start laying people off. And we don't do that, because the minute you come in and start laying people off, and I'll grant you there are some cases where maybe a company's completely overstaffed, but that's not our objective, because you start laying people off, and the next thing you know, when people see you coming down the hall, they're all heading to the four corners of the building. You've destabilized the organization. We want to stabilize it, and in many cases keep the folks that are there, because we're going to grow the business. We're going to stop the problem that they have and then position them for growth and then enter a growth phase. So.
Don, we've got about a minute left. Do you find that the owner of the company or the president of the company is just not aware of some of the profound problems that are going on beneath him or her?
I think that's true in many cases. I think they tend to, the old saying of being stuck working in the business versus on the business. Virtually every client that we engage with are stuck working in the business. There's lots of opportunities working with the teams to grow the businesses and all. So.
All right. Well, unfortunately, we're out of time. It's Riverbend Growth Partners, and we will see you next week.
KFXR